Hey class, Professor Fernandez here. This lecture is going to be a very short lecture, but I need to set up the rise of Adolf Hitler and Germany during World War II, and especially before you watch the movie Schindler's List, which you're going to be watching shortly. Now, the rise of Germany has many different facets, but I want you to take into account what we talked about at the end of World War One, especially the Treaty of Versailles. If you remember, with Versailles, it was a matter of it was a matter of punishing Germany, right? Punishing Germany for everything that happened in World War One, probably to the detriment of the world, we could argue. Now, what's happening in the world as we're talking about FDR is dealing with the United States and the Great Depression with his New Deal, but across the globe, across the world, especially in Europe and other places, the continent's major powers were still struggling with the after effects of the First World War, meaning in Europe, right? So there's a depression going on in the United States, but that depression is going on throughout the world. And if it's affecting the United States severely, which we could argue, yeah, that it's affecting unemployment and hunger, uh, if if it's bad in the United States, it's even worse in Germany. Because remember, the Treaty of Versailles practically, well, it does, it bankrupts the country because they're responsible for paying off World War One. So it's having issues. Germany at this point, and let me go to the next slide, and I'll make this bigger for y'all. Uh, Germany is headed by the Weimar Republic. Um, and it will eventually collapse because of the economic chaos of the Treaty of Versailles, but in addition to this worldwide depression that's going on. As I have on this slide here, under the Weimar Republic, which is the German government at the time, the global economic crisis affecting the United States spiraled much of the European continent into chaos, especially Germany and the Weimar Republic. Germany and the Weimar Republic will collapse with the economy, and out of the ashes will emerge Adolf Hitler's National Socialists. We, of course, know them as the Nazis. The Nazis. Um, because when a country collapses, people look for someone to help, someone to save the country. And of course, we've learned throughout history some of the choices that have been picked from the chaos of a collapsed government or people usually are not good people, right? Because people will gravitate to whoever tells them what they want to hear. And that would be Adolf Hitler. Here's a picture before we go to the next slide of a German woman. And we talked about inflation a bit, I guess the class before last, right? When you just, the government prints up money, but it's not worth anything because you can print up as much money as you'd like. But if there's nothing to back it up, it's worthless, right? It takes like $5,000 to buy a loaf of bread if you just keep on printing dollars because it's worth practically nothing. Well, here's a German lady during the Depression and during the Weimar Republic taking the German currency is the mark. As opposed to the dollar, right? The mark, that she's actually burning her money, that it's worth more as a fuel to warm herself and maybe her family than it is as a currency, as it is as a money. She'd rather burn it. It's worth more to burn than to actually, it has no worth in buying anything. That's how bad the economy is in Germany during the Weimar Republic. Now, like I mentioned, Adolf Hitler, he actually is part of the Weimar Republic. He's the German chancellor in 1933, and he will use hatred to advance his objectives, which of course is control. He will champion, and I have it on the slide, championing German racial supremacy, fascist government, military expansionism. Hitler will rise to power, and after many attempts, aborted attempts to take power in Germany, he will eventually become chancellor, part of the government. And you're going, well, why the hell would they put him in the government? Well, the government, i.e., the prime minister, would actually try to bring Hitler in to keep an eye on him, right? To keep an eye on him, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. That's kind of bringing Hitler in hoping to kind of keep an eye on him. And of course, we know that doesn't work, that Hitler will command power and actually take power. And we see that with the rise of the Third Reich. The Nazis, the National Socialists, will conquer German institutions, and I have that on the slide, while destroying any democratic traditions. Hitler will repudiate, meaning disagree with or just flat out ignore the damages and the strict military limitations of the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler will say the Treaty of Versailles was unfair. We're not going to pay attention to whatever it tells us we have to do. And in doing so, Germany and Hitler will rebuild its military and its navy, which of course were big no-nos in the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. If you remember, we talked about, I think they were just allowed a police force. Hitler's going to ignore that. He's going to ignore that and start rebuilding the military and the navy and the Air Force, the Luftwaffe. You don't have to know that, but the German Air Force, the Air Corps. He will reoccupy regions that he had lost, or Germany had lost, during the war. And he will put the military and remilitarize the Rhineland along the border with France. So Hitler in Germany, the Nazis, they start rebuilding the military. They start doing everything that was forbidden under the Treaty of Versailles. But why isn't the world, punishing him or coming after him? Well, you got to remember what's happening during this time period. The world is going through an economic chaos. The Great Depression is affecting pretty much every Western democracy or any capitalistic idea or countries, including the United States. Hitler and his ideas include unification of Europe's Germanic peoples under one nation. So he wants to bring all German people together under one country. And when I say German people or Germanic, you may have heard the term the perfect Aryan race. Think of blonde, blue-eyed, the perfect German, and the Aryan race. He also, and I have that as my second bullet point, he will start to, like I mentioned, remilitarize and start expanding his military into areas, i.e. territories he was not allowed to militarize, have military troops and armaments. He will call for Lebensraum. I may be butchering that German name, but I apologize, which is German for living space, and particularly in Eastern Europe. So basically he's saying, I need to expand Germany a bit because we need some space, right? We need some space, including land and resources for the prosperity and the future of Germany. So he's making his case to the world that he's expanding the borders, militarizing areas he shouldn't be, because Germany needs to grow a little bit just to maintain Germany and make it fruitful, right? Prosperity of Germany. Of course, this is all BS, right? Now, the most horrific and heinous of his beliefs is in the Untermenschen, German for lesser humans. They would have to go. And the Untermenschen would have to go, meaning he found his scapegoat, or the reason for the problems of the Germanic people. The reasons, and this is his belief and many Germans, that the reasons why the country has gone to hell, and of course, they're going to blame these lessers, this group of people. Once in power, Hitler worked toward the twin goals of unifying the Germanic people and expansion. And once again, I want you to remember, who do they blame? They blame these lessers, these Untermenschen. And the Untermenschen I'm talking about, of course, are the Jews, the Jewish population. And I'm not necessarily just the Jewish population in Germany or Austria, where Hitler is originally from, but the Jews throughout Europe, the entire Europe. And there's documentation throughout the world. That's the eventual goal. That's the eventual goal. All right. I know that was a short lecture, a little short PowerPoint, but I did need to set that up on the rise of Hitler. And it comes about because of that Treaty of Versailles, which we talked about at the end of World War I, and it punishing Germany so severely that its fall and its collapse. Of course, the Germanic people or the German people are going to look to anyone that tells them what they want to hear. They feel that they've been wronged. that they've been betrayed by its leaders. And Hitler, of course, will rise to fill that vacuum. And of course, using the Untermenschen, meaning the Jews, as the reason for all their problems. All right. Uh, at this point, I just want to make sure that everyone did read from your assigned readings for today, which was The Massacre of the Jews, which is a great document regarding why many people believe that this was not true, that nobody could do this to another human being. In fact, the majority of the documents are talking about how people cannot believe what was happening in Europe with the Germans. And how unfortunately they were so wrong that human beings are able to do this to other human beings. So this kind of sets it up for the movie that you're going to be watching either today or tomorrow or whenever you get a chance that I put a link on, which is Schindler's List.